So, welcome to part 2. What happened next? Well, that was all pretty intense, part 1. So I've moved on from the coffee to something a little bit stronger. Cheers. A bit shaky. What happened next? We cried lots, we hugged lots. And now the secret was out. Life was pretty tense. I felt absolutely devastated. I thought everything would be lost. I thought I'd lose Katie. I thought I'd lose my lovely family. I thought I'd lose everything. I was rock bottom. And we didn't really talk about it for a few days, and things were very tense. But Katie, being the wonderful, wonderful person that she is, broke the silence and said, look, we must talk. She said, life was so busy then, because she was out to work and I was working and had to do the garden or put the Christmas tree up or all the things that were happening before Christmas, which obviously don't happen now because of the lockdown. And there didn't seem to be time where we could actually sort this out. So Katie said, right, whatever happens, whatever we're doing, we cancel it on a Monday night between 5 o'clock and 7:30. And we use that time to be together. What we'll do is we'll play some guitar together, because that's very soothing and helps get your mind off things. And we would talk. And so the first Monday was pretty tough, and basically we played guitar all night because we hadn't crossed the threshold of actually saying what we needed to say to each other. But as the weeks went on, Monday nights became very special, and we played no guitar within a couple of weeks, and we just talked. And we also started by having Liz and Pete round and me explaining to them the situation, and they were incredibly supportive. Incredibly, because of course Pete's a psychologist anyway and Liz is a therapist, which always helps. And also with Billy and Bobby on the Skype. Incredibly loving, incredibly supportive and amazing. And Kate would talk to Billy as well privately, because she was also beginning a journey into the unknown, where she needed another voice, another friend, and they've always been incredibly close, so that worked very, very well. And Liz and Pete too, fantastic, and they really helped us so much to get through those early days, and continued to do so literally all the time. I mean, we spent 4 hours on Skype again with Barbara last night, and it was lovely. Anyhow, the things that emerged from that, I explained all about being transgender. I told her all the stories that you've heard in part 1, and gradually things came back into my memory. And because when you have hurtful things happen to you, your brain will often lock them away so you don't recall them, to protect yourself from the hurt. But I was gradually unwinding everything and remembering things that had happened and how I'd felt. Anyway, Katie and I became really, really perhaps closer than we have ever been during that time. Over the years, 36 years that we've been together, we've always had a really happy, wonderful time, but it's very easy to get into a routine where you don't tell each other I love you, or you don't have more intimacy. You don't cuddle as much. It's not because you love them less, it's just that that's how life happens. But suddenly we did again. We were cuddling up under a rug watching TV together. We were kissing each other and hugging each other and telling each other we loved each other and playing lots of guitar, sitting down and chatting. And gradually the Monday night sessions became less relevant because we didn't have to force the conversation into a 2.5 hour slot on a Monday night, because we were able to talk about it over lunch or in the garden or whilst we were playing guitar or in bed. So it's been an enormous process of discovery for both of us. But clearly we needed to do something, concrete about this, because it doesn't go away, dysphoria. And to make it worse, once the genie is out of the bottle, as I always say, it is not possible to put the genie back in. So we had to see what to do. For years and years and years, prior to this, of course, with the internet, I had Googled literally everything on the planet about being transgender. So Katie started to Google everything on the planet about transgender, so that she understood. And although she can never really understand, because she's, fully cisgendered, she's, fully female, but she was on a journey too. She's still on a journey. So what do we do? Well, the first stop was my GP down in Dorking. And we booked a double session. We went in together and explained the whole situation, and I cried lots. So what do we do about this? So 2 things. She first of all referred me to the Tavistock and Portman Gender Identity Clinic in London, which is about the only one. There are lots of resources for children who are transgender, but there's nothing for a 63-year-old man. Also, I thought. So she referred me to the Tavistock and Portman, and that was a great relief. And she also told me to self-refer to Talking Therapies, which is a counselling service provided by the NHS. So I started a session of 7 hours of weekly counselling, because in that time, in talking therapy being really useful, now I've done it, I come out the back of it and I think it was fantastic, but at the beginning it was like you spill the beans. I cried and cried my heart out in session 1. And in session 2 I said, right, I've told you everything, now what's the plan? I wanted an action plan. I wanted to know exactly what we did when, and get on with it. But of course that's not what talking therapy is about. It doesn't give you a plan, it just listens and gets you to explore your own feelings and thoughts, which was very scary at first, but as I say, coming out the back of it was fine. After week 2, however, which I found was the most troublesome one, I was really, really depressed. So I phoned Dr. again and said, I haven't heard anything from Tavistock and Portman, so could you check that I'm actually on the list? Because normally you get a letter saying, thank you, the waiting list is so long. So she phoned the clinic, and only to find out that I was on the waiting list, but it would take a minimum of 2 years before I could have a first assessment, and a minimum of a further 18 months before I could have a second. I absolutely hit rock bottom. I was so deeply depressed and anxious. And when you go to these sessions, you fill in a form where you have to answer various questions from which they can assess your level of stress and anxiety. And it's like out of 30 or something, and I was 27. My counsellor said I should go to see Dr. Qureshi again, because therapy works very well with anti-anxiety and anti-depression medication. I've never been one to want to take pills, but boy did I want to take pills. I was just in such a state, not knowing that I'd started on a path that I thought was going to save my life, and I was going to have to wait another 2 years before even being seen. That was awful. Obviously by this time I'd stopped dressing completely, so when the dysphoria kicked in I couldn't do anything about that. And everything that was hidden under my desk felt dirty, felt wrong. It was like I wanted to cleanse myself. I wanted to rid myself of everything. And anyhow, the therapy sessions helped, and I started taking the antidepressants, and slowly, very slowly, I started to come up from the bottom. And then I forgot to mention I'd also had 6 weeks of hypnotherapy. Now the reason for that was, and in fact I thought of this when we were in Spain on holiday that year, that Kate was talking about when she had had hypnotherapy some years ago and how helpful it was just to take yourself out of your mind and out of your spirit, as it were, and examine yourself and you know, make some further actions happen subconsciously. So I've been, you know, trying to give up smoking for forever, it seems, which is now in motion. And so I, under the pretext of going to a hypnotherapist to quit smoking, in fact, I went to the hypnotherapist to help with my dysphoria. And the timings were just amazing, because this all happened exactly at the right time in the sequence of events that I've described. And as I came to the end of it was about in the middle, because I hadn't been able to dress or things like that, and Kate had been chatting a lot to Barbara privately. And I remember in my last hypnotherapy session, Hannah, the therapist, said, as she did after every week's counselling, so what are your targets for what's the outcome before we meet again? What's the outcome you want to happen? And I said, you know, by this time I'd spilled the beans on everything. I said it would just be nice to sit with Katie in front of the television wearing a nice pink soft fluffy jumper. Why not? I could never understand why boys aren't allowed to wear nice clothes. Doesn't have to be female, but, you know, soft clothes, not harsh clothes, gentle things. Because I've always said that gender is not binary. It's not that you're just male or female. There's a spectrum all the way through. And if you look at one end of the spectrum, the English, you know, Welsh rugby team, you have that very male, and then you look at the other end and you see the cheerleaders, they're very female, and, or, you know, in between you've got lots of different kinds of people, and that's where I have always been. And most people don't understand the difference between sexuality and gender, so Google it. But there's a massive difference. Sexuality obviously is determined by your physical bodily characteristics, and gender is defined by the way you portray yourself. And I've learned a big lesson from that moving forward, I want my life to be free, and I want to be able to express myself as I really am, and not how I want others to perceive me. Remember that. It's very, very important. Anyway, back to the pink fluffy jumper story. Katie had been talking to Barbara a lot, and Barbara said to Katie in one of her things, so in your next Monday session, why don't you just tell Martin to go and put on a pink fluffy jumper? I was incredibly nervous. So I went and got my pink fluffy jumper, came back in really tentatively, and we sat down together and cuddled and watched the TV. And it was amazing. And that process has developed because it's essential to take these things in baby steps. That until I was dressing full time. That's the benefit of the lockdown. I can do that. So I have been living as a female now since February, my birthday, which has been amazing, but more of that later. So back to the hypnotherapy coinciding with the Dr. Qureshi visits, and they both said, well, you should try and find a transgender support group. And I said, well, I've looked absolutely everywhere, but there's nothing for people like me in this area, unless I wanted to drive to Northamptonshire or something like that. And then by stroke of chance, at the end of January, I found the Surrey Transgender Support Group in Guildford. It was a new group. This was only their second meeting, I think, and it was in 3 days' time on a Saturday night. So I told Katie about this and I said, shall we go? And so we decided we would go. Oh my goodness me, that was so incredibly nerve-wracking. We got there, I was dressed as Martin, incredibly nervous. And we went into a room full of transgender people, and they were so welcoming, so kind, so loving. They welcomed us with open arms. We arrived at about 7 and we were there until about 9:30. We met some really lovely people and people who were on the same journey but at a different point on the pathway. One particularly lovely French couple, and they told us how they had been through the journey. And this was all just so fortuitous. And they asked me where I was on the journey, and I said, well, very, very early days, and you know, oh well, no, you know, I was still completely in denial. And we had an escape word. We just sorted out that if it became too much for me at any one point, I'd say, cheese fondue, and that would be the cue to leave. So that's what happened. We got to a point where I was just, I was able to listen to what other people were saying, but I wasn't able to talk about how I felt. And so I managed, Sophie, I think it was, asked me the question, so where are you on your journey? I said, I really don't know, it's very early stages, but right now my brain is like stirring a cheese fondue. That was the cue, and so we came out. Kate said, I never thought you'd really be able to get that into the conversation, but I did. I had explained about the problems with the Tavistock and Portman waiting lists, and everyone in the room had the same issue. So Julie said, well, you should look at Gender GP. Google it. It's a special portal for trans people, and it's basically a private clinic that can give you counselling and ultimately SRS, sexual reassignment surgery, if you so choose. And so I signed up to Gender GP on the 6th of February, and they have been amazing. I've done counselling sessions over Skype with them. I've done all the questionnaires, all the forms, all the medical history, the blood tests, the psychology, and I'm very happy to say that I have been approved to start hormone replacement therapy, which will enable me, yes, there will be some minor bodily changes, but I really think at my age I'm not going to go through puberty again and come out with huge boobs. It's more for the emotional and psychological issues of balancing the testosterone and estrogen in my body. So I've just been approved, and so that will start in the next couple of weeks probably, which is very exciting. So that's kind of where we are today on the 1st of May. So I have been dressing full time. Katie has given me a name, which is Francesca, which is very nice. We're on a difficult journey, and it's not one that's going to stop. How the family comes to terms with that, I don't know, because coming out to friends and family, it's great, it's fine living in lockdown and fully dressed and with makeup and everything else. And we have been out shopping a few times. Kate took me to Primark in Kingston. We went on the bus and spent the whole afternoon shopping with Mum, and we had so much fun. We'd never been shopping together because of what I called forbidden fruit. Next episode I will tell you all about forbidden fruit. But we went as girlies together shopping and had such a lovely time. The upside of all of that is that my depression is over. My anxiety is still there, but greatly reduced. The last thing that my counsellor said to me was, Martin, as you go through this transition, you have to make sure you enjoy it. You need to get rid of the guilt and the fear and the pain. And I've done that. I've cleansed myself. I still have dysphoric moments, by the way, which is interesting. So last weekend I had a meltdown. I'll tell you more about those incidents as they happen. But Katie and I are having such fun. We love each other so much. And we are just having fun. So we're enjoying it. Coming out to the friends and family will be difficult, or maybe not. Because I know that darling Ben, Lucy and Polly are really up to speed with LGBT issues, in this day and age, and that you've probably got some LGBT friends, very good friends. But I do understand for you that whilst I know you'll be really, really understanding and kind, it's still going to be a shock when you find out that your father is transgender. I hope I've been a good father. I've tried really hard. And I'm sorry that I've kept this all a secret. But I'm cleansed and looking forward to this part of my life, liberated and happy. And by the way, I sleep at night. Love you. God bless you.